Hello and welcome back to my video channel. I haven't posted in a while, so I apologize for that, but I do endeavor to post at least once a week. In today's video, we're gonna actually look at how to increase the sensitivity of your Apple Pencil in Procreate. Compared to this is anecdotal, but I get a sense that in Photoshop there is more sensitivity. As I don't know if that's anecdotal or the fact that I'm working on Cintiq that is not Retina display. But I just here are some tips that that you can use to actually increase especially when you're drawing with a really small brush size on a file that's say not crazy amount of resolution. So there are a few tips that I wanted to discuss. I'm also going to actually go through a time lapse of the drawing process to achieve this drawing in Procreate. And as always, I'm going to actually produce a enriched media comic page in the comic machine. So what I'm using is an iPad Pro 12.9-inch Apple Pencil. I'm using Procreate and the comic machine. So not all drawings you have to adjust the sensitivity, but in a drawing like this, I'm gonna move this out of the way here. You have large line sizes, brush sizes, for larger objects, and for smaller in the distance features that you want. You still want sharp, but much smaller line, and it seems less so in Procreate that one brush with grain could handle all of that in one shot. But there are workarounds. To start off with, just want to explain the relationship between the size of the brush and the sensitivity of the brush. And when I say sensitivity, I mean how dark the brush you can get it, and how receptive the screen is to your stylus. So what I have here is a brush shape at different sizes, and what the dots represent behind them are the pixels on the screen. So obviously a Retina display on an iPad has way more pixels than a standard definition Cintiq. So here I have a large brush, and as you can see, there's a lot of pixels being in that are covered by that shape. So as you can see, if I reduce the size of that same brush, there are less pixels in it. So less pixels mean they're less. The screen is less receptive to the ink. So more pixels in the shape that you're drawing, the more darker or receptive the screen is going to be. So there are a few ways to increase the receptiveness of it. But before I show you those methods, I just want to do a quick demo of what I'm talking about. So I have a regular sized, well, a fairly large size, you can see, brush, oval brush, and I'm going to set the opacity at around 50%. I'm going to keep it there. You can see that I can very easily actually get paint or ink onto the screen. Now if I adjust the size to something very small, say if I'm going in to draw detail that is barely actually visible, it's very hard to get ink onto the screen. So obviously the first way to actually increase the sensitivity or the amount of ink that can be deposited on the screen is just increase the opacity. Just increase it to as much as I can, and as you can see, even if I have it at 100, it doesn't get that much darker. And if I, the other way is of course increasing the size of the brush, but then you want to draw more detail, that defeats the purpose. So like say if you wanted to actually reduce the brush by a small amount, then doing this is an option. So that's your first option. But of course, if you have the brush too small, then even at 100%, it doesn't. It's not effective. And I think in Photoshop, adjusting the flow and opacity has a more effect on it. So that's one of the drawbacks of Procreate, but you can overcome it Another way of increasing the sensitivity is in the preferences, and that's editing the pressure curve, and that is I think maybe it should be your last effort, because what it does is it reduces the range that a brush has, so it's almost like either on or off. So if I increase it to the top and to the left, well, still doesn't do much actually. That's a little bit better. So I'm gonna set that back to the, I'm gonna reset it back to what it was before. A third way of increasing the, actually there's actually four, is to, in the grain menu, to reduce the size of the grain. So what the grain does, it's almost like pixels in a way. If you have large pieces of grain with if you zoom in on it, there's actually space in between the grain. So I mean, the more space in between there, the lighter the brush is going to be. So if you actually reduce the grain to something small, then it's there's more black in the brush. So again, it's better than, like I said, it's getting better actually already. But what I find is, I'm going to reset this back to where it was before, is the, like all the grains that are included with the, with Procreate, and possibly any grains that you actually download, you can invert the grain source. Usually the grains, if they're flipped, they're not exactly 50-50 as far as the blackness of the grain to the whiteness of the grain. I mean, the distance between dots, between the grain particles, there's more black than white. I mean, sorry, white than black. So if you invert the grain source, so what this previous basic says, all the white area will be black. Actually, on the, I'm not sure why that's the case, but all the white area is actually black when you apply it when you draw on the screen. So if you invert the grain source, you can see it's whiter, but it actually makes it darker. So you can, as you can see immediately, it has a very significant change in the brush. If you just go back and forth, it's quite significant actually. So that's a very easy thing to do actually. So of course, when you get the brush to be a bit larger, it's actually too black. So what you have to do is actually decrease the opacity by quite a bit to accommodate for that. But once you flip it back to the other, then it actually, the grain is quite more visible, so you can increase it again. So I find when you're drawing that especially if you like one brush a lot, and you do a lot of it with one brush, that if you don't want to actually set a whole like a bunch of brushes for small scale drawing and large scale drawing, then it's very easy just to flip the grain source, and that will instantly give you more sensitivity when you're doing small detailed work. Of course, if you don't like grain in your drawing brush, then that's kind of a moot point, because it's a very fairly black it's a solid black brush that you're using. But yeah, you know, if you have any more ideas, please let me know. So here I am with the time lapse of the Procreate drawing. So as in the other ones, I did a thumbnail previously, a very small rough one. What I'm doing now is actually, I always started on the head. I drew too big, so I'm just reducing it, and then I realized it's too rough, so I'm going back to the blue line to tighten it up, give it more detail before I do the final black ink line. So I mean, it's up to you how detailed your rough drawing should be. So obviously the more detail it has, the the more accurate your drawing will be finally. But leaving things up to chance gives it an immediacy and a look of confidence. So you wouldn't go too crazy with it. Here I'm using just a straight edge. It's always good to have a straight edge because using the the assisted drawing, or even the thing where you actually draw a line and click on and hold it to make a line, it just takes too long, and you lose some of the workflow. So I'm fleshing out the characters. I wanted this feeling of all these stormtroopers spilling out of the of this troop carrier. So I think I'm going to be adjusting a lot of the figures that I have on the rough. But so this, as far as composition wise, I have this guy in the foreground, there's a midground, and then the ship is in the background. And you have a bit of foliage here on the edges. So you can see here I've lightened where the black is. When I apply a dark shadow or a black area, sorry, I paused it for some reason there. I do it on another layer so I get the nice confident strokes, and then I go back with an eraser to shape it, or sort of like sculpt it to the shape that you want. You can see it in these areas here. You can see it here. I can erase it back. So it doesn't look too overworked here. So I adjusted this guy here to make him scanning the area with his rifle as he comes out. Give it a more dynamic pose. And then I added another guy in the back in the troop carrier, ready, just about to disembark. For the troop carrier, I just looked at a reference for an Imperial Storm troop carrier. So again, as I mentioned before earlier, to get these small figures, the brush that I was using for the large figure becomes becomes very ineffective. So yeah, I think I basically switched the grain source. So I'm just laying in the outlines of it here. For the window, as you can see, I just put in the dark shape and then erase out the framework of the canopy there. I'm always switching between the black and the erase brush. Like here, I lay in the black shade of the shape of the wing here, and then add in some detail or structure to it. The shadow underneath, I opened up a layer and then laid in a black area with broad strokes, and then started sculpting back to make it fit within into the context of the drawing before I merged it with a layer underneath. So I will be using gray tone here, so I'm not going to draw in put any line work for the distant trees there. It'll be all in gray, just so that it'll be pushed back more. You don't want to make it it's always a fine line. It's always a judgment call, but when you're talking about line work, to how busy it could get. You don't want to be too busy that there's actually no composition or no white space, blank space. So the trees there, I didn't want to go too crazy. I added in some highlights from sunlight on the edge texture there. Again, I laid in a black shadow and then erased out some detail to give it form down here as well. If the black is too black, what I did is I reduced the opacity of that layer to work on it to see where the lines actually should underneath it are, and then increase it again. Doing some final touches. And there you go. So here I am in the comicmachine.com, and I'm already logged in and open up the comic to that page. It's already been done, but I'll show you how I achieved it. It's actually a very simple page. It's just a zoom out. So because of the page before where the crew is on the troop carrier, next scene is they're on the ground. So I wanted to do a fade out. So it fades from black, and then and also a zoom out as well. So I'll show you what is achieved here. Yeah, so it's black, and then it zooms out as it fades in, and then you have two people saying something here. So what I'm gonna do is open up a blank page and show how I did it. The image I saved out at 2048 by 1536, which is the iPad screen resolution. Because it was zooming out, I want to save it at a higher resolution. The comic machine is 1024 by 736. I'm gonna think. Actually, let me see. 768. Sorry. Anyways, if that was a size, it would just fit in perfectly. But because it's oversized, it bleeds off the edge of the canvas. In actual fact, for this page, it's a very quick zoom out. It probably could have been the screen size 1024 by 768, and it would have not mattered actually. But since I saved it out at a larger screen size, I'll start with that. So let's go to our transitions at the start. And at the end, is where I placed it when it first came into the app. So to start off with, I want to zoom in on his face. So I'm gonna, because it's bleeding off the page here, I'm gonna use I can't get the corner anchors to drag them, so I'm gonna use the scale slider to increase the size. I'm gonna start off with his face, and then I will end off at the full screen. Now it's since I know the screen resolution, I'm just going to type that in, and it's the position of is at 0, 0, so that fits perfect. 0, 0 meaning x, y, this point here, x at 0, y at 0, and it's going to end off at 100% opacity, which is 1, and I'm going to start off with black fade in, so I'm going to hit the opacity at 0, and I'm going to do the easing in and out, which I prefer mostly. So let's just preview that. Of course, nothing happens because I didn't set a duration. The duration is 0, so it takes no time to happen. I think I set it at 0, so let's see what that looks like. There you go. And then he says the captain there. You can see it's conveniently I put in the asterisk where the bolding is going to be. So this is going to happen after the zoom out. So I'm going to set a new text layer and paste in the text. And I think it's 6 pixels. Just leave the padding, curved tail at 2 pixel width, border at 1. I'm gonna bring it over here. And I'm gonna try to get a pleasant shape out of it. I'm gonna reduce the padding there. Maybe increase the okay. So I mean, if you don't like the way the line break happens when you use the anchors to adjust the bubble, you can just go in and break up the line breaking manually with your keyboard. And so this guy says this. That's great. So I wanted to fade in a half second to start fading from 0, easing it out. Okay, I'm not going to preview it because I'm pretty confident that's what I like. I'm going to do another text bubble because there's only 2 text bubbles. I don't need to do a put in a next button like I usually do, and I'll copy the next block of text. Oops, and get this out of there. Great, 6 pixels. Curved tail, 2 pixel, 1 border. Border width. That's great. Oops. Sometimes the anchors go on top of each other, so you have to watch. You have to be careful where you click. I'm gonna try to see how it looks without as much. Yeah, great. There you go. I think I read somewhere online that you should the tail should end about halfway towards the sound source, which is this guy's mouth. So I go by that rule of thumb. I'm sure there's exceptions. Great. So I'm going to do the same. I'll have it fade in a half second from opacity, easing it out, and that would be the end of the page. So I'll put in the next button, or the click button for the user. Actually, it's at the end of the page. You have to put in a wait button for now, because otherwise it would just flow into, it will go to the next page without waiting at all. So it's almost a necessity. So let's preview the entire page. Great. You can do it full screen as well. Do it full screen. Oh, it happened so fast there. So yeah, so if you know, from the page previously, there will be sort of a feeling of a time difference. So from this one, there'll be blackness, and then it'll zoom out and fade in. So it's a great way of indicating passage of time. So thanks again for viewing my video. I promise to put it out sooner than later next time. So at this point, I want to do some shameless self-promotion here. I think a lot of you are seeing this on Facebook. If you are, feel free to go to my YouTube site and subscribe and hit the notification bell. There you can get all the videos and the latest updates. It's just at youtube.com/user/artrendermans with an S. I'm not sure why, but and if you're seeing this on YouTube and want to check out the Facebook page, feel free to go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/art.renderman.5, or just search for Art Renderman. Thanks very much. I'll catch you next time, and take care.